They were going to burn her alive. Aria stood on the execution platform, hands bound, throat stripped bare for the blade, or the flames. 9 years of silence, 9 years of scrubbing blood from marble floors while her brothers howled in cages beneath the castle. And now, with seconds left, she would either break her vow and destroy everything, or die having saved no one. The Alpha King watched from his throne, eyes dark with betrayal. She had one move left, one impossible, brutal choice. What happens next will shatter a kingdom. Stay until the end. Drop a like and comment where you're watching from. You won't believe how this ends. The first time Aria saw the Alpha King, she was covered in her own blood. She'd been 10 years old, kneeling in the mud outside the fortress gates of Thornwind Keep, her brothers screaming behind her as the transformation took them. Antlers burst through Kael's skull. Fenrir's spine cracked and reformed. Theron's hands became claws. And through the iron bars she saw him, Ronan Blackmore, barely a man himself at 17, crowned 3 weeks prior after his father's brutal death. He stood atop the battlement walls in black armor, wind tearing at his dark hair, watching the border villages burn. He hadn't looked at her, hadn't seen the girl in the mud, clutching 6 torn pieces of her brother's clothing, making a vow to a goddess she barely understood. Silence for salvation. 9 years. 6 garments woven from poison and moonlight. No exceptions. The old woman who'd cursed them, who'd smiled as she did it, had made the terms clear. Speak even once, and the curse becomes permanent. Her brothers would die as beasts, but finish the work in silence and they'd be freed. Aria had chosen. She'd opened her mouth to scream and forced it shut instead. The sound died in her throat. It had stayed dead for 9 years. Now she was 19, and the Alpha King still didn't see her. Girl, the water's gone cold again. Aria's hands tightened on the copper pitcher. She stood in the shadow of a marble column in the king's private chambers, invisible as always, waiting to pour wine or stoke fires or disappear when bodies needed removing. Around her, the court of Thornwind Keep moved like a living organism. Lords in furs and steel, ladies dripping jewels and venom, guards with dead eyes and steady hands. They walked past her, through her. She was a ghost in servant's gray. Useless thing? Lady Corinne, the king's chief advisor, snapped her fingers. Fetch fresh water. If you can manage that without dropping it this time. Aria bowed her head, moved silently toward the door. Behind her, she heard the woman laugh. I don't know why Ronan keeps her. She's mute, damaged. Found her half dead on the road years ago. Some say she's cursed. Cursed? A younger voice, sharp with curiosity. Why else would someone so young refuse to speak? The physicians found nothing wrong. She simply won't. Corinne's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. Personally, I think she witnessed something horrible. Frontier raids, probably, her family slaughtered, mind broken. Aria's fingers went white on the pitcher handle. They don't know. They'll never know. She descended the servants' stairs, stone steps worn smooth by centuries of invisible feet. The keep was a monster of a fortress, built when the frontier wars were hot, when the kingdom of Thornwind stood as the last bastion against the wildlands beyond. Its walls were 20 feet thick. Its dungeons went down 7 levels. 6 of those levels held prisoners. The 7th held beasts. Aria moved through the kitchens, ignoring the cook's barked orders, and slipped through a service door most servants avoided. The air grew colder, damper. She descended narrow stairs lit by guttering torches, past the wine cellars, past the armory, down into the bowels of the keep, where even the guards rarely ventured. The beast cages. Well, if it isn't our favorite little mouse. Aria's stomach clenched. She turned. Garrett, one of the dungeon keepers, leaned against the wall, picking his teeth with a sliver of bone. He was a thick man, cruel-faced, the kind who enjoyed his work too much. Come to visit the monsters again? He grinned. I've been wondering about that. Why a servant girl spends her free hours down here staring at animals that'd rip her apart given half a chance. Aria said nothing. She never said anything. Maybe you're touched in the head. He stepped closer. Maybe you get off on it. Danger, fear. His hand reached for her arm. She moved, not fast, not aggressive, just away. A servant's dodge, practiced and submissive, clutching the water pitcher like a shield. Garrett laughed. Skittish little thing. Go on then. But if I catch you trying to feed them again, I'll report you to the king himself. Those beasts are property of the crown, kept for the arena fights. They're not pets. Aria bowed her head and hurried past him. The 7th level was a circular chamber carved from bedrock, ringed with 6 massive cages forged from iron and magic-treated steel. Inside each cage, darkness, movement, the scrape of claws on stone. She approached the first cage. Yellow eyes gleamed in the shadows. Kale, she mouthed silently, fingers forming the sign language only her brothers understood now. The wolf-stag creature inside shifted. Massive antlers scraped the cage ceiling. His form was a nightmare hybrid, wolf's body, stag's head, human hands that ended in claws. The curse had twisted them, each differently, taking their strongest traits and corrupting them. Kale had been the eldest, the protector. Now he was the largest beast, the most dangerous. He pressed close to the bars. Aria reached through, fingers brushing the coarse fur of his neck. His rumble was almost a purr. I'm sorry, I'm trying, I'm so close. She moved to the next cage. Fenrir, sleek and serpentine now, scales and fur, too many teeth. Then Thuron, Cade, Lysander, and finally Little Ash, who'd only been 7 when the curse took him. He was the smallest, a foxhound thing that chittered and whined when she touched the bars. Every night for 9 years she'd come here. Every night she'd told them without words, I haven't forgotten. I won't stop. And every night she went back to her work. The garments were hidden in the walls. She'd discovered the gap behind a loose stone in the laundry quarters 3 years ago. A space just large enough to hide 6 folded pieces of fabric, each one woven from thread she'd spun herself from the fibers of nettle and nightshade, dyed with her own blood, stitched by candlelight while the other servants slept. 3 garments were complete. 3 still needed months of work. She had 18 months left before the 9-year deadline. 18 months, and she'd barely spoken to another human being in all that time. The Serpent Queen is coming. The announcement rippled through the keep like poison through water. Aria was polishing silver in the great hall when she heard it, whispered between 2 guards, their voices tight with something between fear and fascination. You're certain? Ryder came an hour ago. She'll be here within the week, coming to pay her respects to the king, she says. The guard snorted. More like coming to sink her claws in. Think he'll accept her proposal? He'd be a fool not to. Alliance with the Serpent Isles would secure the eastern trade routes, and she's... well, you've heard the stories. Beautiful as sin and twice as deadly. That's the one. Aria's hand stilled on the silver platter. The Serpent Queen. Her chest constricted. Her pulse hammered against her ribs. No. No, it can't be. They say she's a sorceress, the first guard continued, that she's lived for centuries, that every man who's loved her has died mysteriously within a year. Sounds like a fairy tale. Sounds like a warning. Aria forced herself to keep polishing, to breathe normally, to appear unaffected, but her mind was screaming. Morgantha. That was the name from the stories her grandmother used to tell. Morgantha of the Serpent Isles, the witch who bathed in blood to stay young, who'd once been mortal, once been kind, until a man betrayed her and she drowned him in his own castle well. The same witch who'd appeared in Aria's village 10 years ago, beautiful and smiling, asking questions about the Vale family. The same witch who'd cursed 6 children because their mother had refused to give her what she wanted, the location of an ancient bloodline relic, hidden for generations. Aria's mother had died protecting that secret. Aria's brothers had paid the price, and now Morgantha was coming here. Indem. She saw Ronan Blackmore up close for the first time that night. There was a feast to prepare the keep for the royal guest's arrival. An excessive display of power and wealth meant to remind the Serpent Queen that Thornwind was not some backwater kingdom to be trifled with. Aria served wine. She moved through the crowd like smoke, refilling goblets, her eyes down, her presence barely registered. The great hall was a chaos of sound, laughter, music, the clash of steel as drunken lords arm-wrestled for sport. At the high table, Ronan sat in the center, carved from stone in silence. He was 26 now, broader than he'd been at 17, harder. His face was all brutal angles, sharp jaw, straight nose, eyes the color of winter storms. Scars marked his hands, his neck, the visible edge of his collarbone. He wore black and silver, no crown, no unnecessary ornament. He looked like what he was, a man forged in violence, ruling a kingdom that respected nothing but strength. More wine, Majesty? A lady leaned close, her dress cut low, her smile practiced. Ronan didn't look at her. No. Are you certain? The night is young. I said no. The woman withdrew, her smile frozen. Aria watched from the shadows. She'd watched him for years, not out of admiration, but necessity. The king's moods dictated the keep's atmosphere. When he was angry, servants died. When he was distracted, opportunities arose. She needed to know him, needed to predict him. She hadn't expected to see him. Because now, up close, she noticed things. The way his jaw tightened when Lord Merrick told a joke about executing thieves. The way his fingers drummed against the table when Lady Corinne suggested raising taxes on the frontier settlements. The way his gaze swept the room, not with arrogance, but with the constant vigilance of someone who trusted no one. He looked tired and alone. Stop it, she told herself. He's not your concern. Your brothers are your concern. She turned to refill another goblet and collided directly with a serving boy carrying a tray of roasted meat. The tray went flying. Grease and fire and flesh hit the floor with a wet crash. The hall went silent. Every eye turned. Aria stood frozen, the wine pitcher still in her hands, staring at the ruined feast spread across the marble. You idiot! The serving boy, young, terrified, grabbed her arm. Do you know how much that cost? The king's going to— Enough! The voice cut through the hall like a blade. Ronan was standing. He descended from the high table with measured steps, his expression unreadable. The crowd parted. Aria's heart slammed against her sternum. Don't look at me. Don't see me. Please. He stopped 3 feet away. You. His voice was low, rough. You're the mute girl. Aria bowed her head, said nothing, could say nothing. How long have you worked here? She didn't respond. Couldn't. Your Majesty, Lady Corinne interjected smoothly, appearing at his elbow. This is Aria. She's been in service for 9 years, I believe. A charity case. You allowed her to stay when she first arrived. Ronan's eyes narrowed. I don't remember that. You were 17, sire. Newly crowned. You had more pressing concerns than one traumatized child. He studied Aria with an intensity that made her skin prickle. She kept her gaze down, her breathing steady, every muscle screaming to run. Clean this up, he said finally. Both of you. He turned and walked away. The hall exhaled. Aria knelt and began gathering pieces of meat with shaking hands. The serving boy crouched beside her, whispering furiously. Are you trying to get killed? The king's in a foul mood already, and then you— She touched his arm, shook her head. I'm sorry. He sighed. Just be more careful, yeah? I don't want your death on my conscience. They cleaned in silence. Around them, the feast resumed, louder now, as if the near disaster had been exciting rather than terrifying. But Aria couldn't stop thinking about the way Ronan had looked at her, not with cruelty, not with indifference, with curiosity, and that was far more dangerous. The Serpent Queen arrived on a morning wrapped in fog. Aria watched from a high window as the procession entered the keep. 20 guards in scaled armor, a carriage carved from black wood and draped in silk, horses that moved too smoothly to be natural. And then she stepped out, Morgantha. She was exactly as Aria remembered, impossibly beautiful, ageless, dark hair that moved like living water, skin like cream, eyes that glittered with ancient malice dressed up as charm. She wore green and gold, serpents coiled around her wrists as jewelry, and when she smiled up at the battlements, Aria swore those eyes locked directly onto hers. She knows I'm here. The thought hit like a fist. She knows. Aria staggered back from the window, her chest heaving. 9 years. 9 years of hiding, of silence, of carefully constructed invisibility. And Morgantha had found her anyway. Or had she come for something else? For someone else? Aria's mind raced. Morgantha didn't form alliances, didn't propose marriages. She consumed. Every king she'd ever attached herself to had died. Every kingdom she'd touched had fallen. Ronan was her next target, and Aria couldn't say a word to warn him. Chit. The formal welcome feast that night was suffocating. Aria served at the high table, close enough to hear every word, invisible enough to be ignored. Morgantha sat beside Ronan, radiant and poisonous, her laughter like music. She touched his arm when she spoke, leaned close to whisper. Played the perfect suitor, charming, deferential, just dangerous enough to be interesting. "Your kingdom is remarkable, Majesty," she purred. "So much strength, so much potential." "Potential for what?" Ronan's tone was neutral. "Growth, expansion. With the right alliance, Thornwind could control the entire eastern frontier. The Serpent Isles have resources you lack: ships, trade routes, access to markets beyond the mountains. And in return? Partnership." Her smile widened. "I propose a marriage alliance. Unite our kingdoms, share our strengths." The hall had gone very quiet. Ronan studied her. "I'll consider it." "Of course, take your time. I'm patient." Her gaze flicked sideways, directly to Aria. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Morgantha's smile sharpened. Aria nearly dropped the wine pitcher. She knows exactly who I am. That night, Aria made a mistake. She should have stayed in the servants' quarters, should have kept her head down, should have waited. Instead, she went to the king's study. She'd seen Morgantha's servants earlier, slipping through corridors they shouldn't have access to. She'd seen them carrying small vials, whispering to the kitchen staff, bribing guards. Poison. Aria knew the signs. She'd studied every toxic plant in the frontier forests. She'd woven them into thread, learned their properties, understood their lethality. Morgantha was going to kill Ronan. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And if Ronan died, the kingdom would fall into chaos, the frontier would burn, and Aria's brothers, locked in the dungeons, would be slaughtered as dangerous animals. She couldn't let that happen. So she broke into the king's private study. It was reckless, insane. If she was caught, she'd be executed. But she had to know what Morgantha was planning. The study was dark, lit only by dying embers in the fireplace. Aria moved on silent feet, searching the desk, the shelves, looking for anything: correspondence, maps, evidence of the alliance terms. She found a letter. It was sealed with black wax, stamped with a serpent, addressed to Ronan in elegant script. Aria's hands trembled as she broke the seal. "My dearest king, forgive my boldness, but I must confess. I've waited a very long time to meet you. Your reputation precedes you. A warrior king, a survivor, a man who has never bowed to anyone. That makes you rare, valuable. And I do so love collecting rare things. Accept my proposal. Wed me before the winter solstice. In return, I will give you power beyond measure, armies, wealth, immortality if you desire it. Refuse, and I will take what I want by force. The choice is yours. But know this, I have already begun making preparations. Your castle is mine. Your guards are mine. Your kingdom will be mine. One way or another." Aria's blood turned to ice. This wasn't a proposal. It was a threat. And Ronan had no idea. She had to warn him. Had to find a way to... Well, what do we have here? Aria spun. Morgantha stood in the doorway, backlit by torchlight, her smile serene. A little mouse, reading letters that don't belong to her. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "You've grown, Aria Vale. Last I saw you, you were a sobbing child in the mud. Now look at you, a servant, silent, forgotten." Aria's throat closed. She stepped back. "Oh, don't be frightened. I'm not going to hurt you. Not yet." Morgantha circled her slowly. "You've been very clever, you know, hiding here, weaving your little cure. Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" Aria's pulse roared in her ears. "I've been watching you for years, darling. Waiting. You see, your mother stole something from me, a relic of immense power, and I know she passed it to you before she died." Aria shook her head violently. "Lying won't help. I can feel it. The magic in your blood. The legacy you carry. Morgantha leaned close, her breath cold. But here's the thing. I don't need you to give it to me. I just need you to suffer. And what better suffering than watching the man you've been watching for 9 years fall under my control? Watching him marry me? Watching him forget you exist? Aria's hands clenched into fists. Oh yes, I know about that too. The way you look at him when you think no one's watching. Pathetic, really. A servant girl in love with a king. Morgantha laughed. Don't worry, I'll let you live long enough to see him crowned as my consort. And then, well, accidents happen. She turned toward the door. Aria's hand shot out, grabbing a letter opener from the desk. Morgantha paused, looked back, smiled. Go ahead. Try. See what happens. Aria's hand shook. The blade gleamed. If I kill her, the curse might break, but I'd be executed. My brothers would die. If I let her live, Ronan dies. The kingdom falls. There has to be another way. Slowly she lowered the blade. Morgantha's smile widened. Smart girl. Now run along, and remember, one word, and your brothers burn. She swept out of the room. Aria stood alone in the darkness, the letter crumpled in her hand, her mind screaming. She had 18 months to finish the garments, but Ronan didn't have 18 months. He had days, maybe less, and she couldn't say a single word to save him. Aria didn't sleep that night. She sat in the narrow space between the laundry room wall and the hidden alcove where her unfinished garments lay folded, her hands moving mechanically through the motions she'd perfected over 9 years. Thread through needle, stitch, pull, repeat. The nightshade fibers burned her fingertips, but she barely felt it anymore. Her mind was elsewhere. On Morgantha's smile. On the letter. On the casual way the sorceress had threatened everything Aria had fought to protect. I've been watching you for years. The words circled like carrion birds. If Morgantha had known where she was all this time, why wait? Why not kill her brothers immediately? Why not take what she wanted by force? Because Morgantha didn't just want the relic. She wanted Aria to break. Suffering was the game. Control was the prize. And Ronan Blackmore was the perfect weapon. Aria's stitches grew tighter, angrier. The fourth garment was nearly complete, a tunic meant for Theron, woven with protection sigils she'd copied from her grandmother's journals. 3 more to go. 18 months had seemed like enough time. Now it felt like a death sentence. A sound made her freeze. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, moving through the servants' quarters toward the laundry. Aria shoved the garment back into its hiding place and pressed the stone flush with the wall. She grabbed a basket of linens and stood just as the door opened. Garrett. The dungeon keeper's eyes swept the room, lingering on her longer than necessary. Working late, Mouse. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Or should I say, sneaking around where you shouldn't be. Aria clutched the basket, her expression carefully neutral. See, here's the thing. Garrett moved closer. I've been thinking about what you do down in those cages, all that time you spend with the beasts. And I started wondering, what if you're not just some touched girl looking for comfort? What if you're doing something else? He grabbed her wrist. What if you're the reason they haven't died yet? The reason they're still valuable enough to keep? Aria tried to pull away. His grip tightened. I've seen you feed them. Seen you touch them. Seen them respond like they know you. His breath was hot and sour. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me what makes you special, or I'm going to tell the king you've been sabotaging crown property. Her pulse hammered. She shook her head violently. No? Then maybe I'll just... The door slammed open. Get your hands off her! Ronan filled the doorway, still dressed for court, his expression carved from black ice. Garrett released Aria so fast she stumbled. Your Majesty, I found her. You found her doing her job. In the middle of the night, which is more than I can say for you. Ronan's voice was deadly quiet. Aren't you supposed to be guarding the lower levels? Yes, sire, but... Then go. Garrett fled. The silence that followed was suffocating. Ronan stepped inside, his gaze sweeping over Aria with that same unsettling intensity from the feast. She kept her eyes down, barely breathing. Are you hurt? She shook her head. Look at me. Slowly she raised her eyes. His expression was unreadable. You've been working here 9 years. In all that time, you've never caused trouble, never complained, never asked for anything. He paused. Why? Aria said nothing. Could say nothing. The physicians say there's nothing physically wrong with you, that you choose not to speak. His jaw tightened. Is that true? She didn't respond. Most people would have left by now, found work somewhere easier, somewhere they wouldn't be, he gestured vaguely, invisible. You have no idea how desperately I need to be invisible. But you stayed. He studied her. Why? The question hung between them, unanswerable. Finally, Ronan exhaled. If Garrett bothers you again, find a way to let me know. I don't tolerate harassment in my keep. He turned to leave. Aria's hand shot out, catching his sleeve. He froze. She released him immediately, her heart pounding, but pointed urgently at the door. Then mimed drinking, then clutched her throat. Ronan's eyes narrowed. Someone's being poisoned? She nodded frantically. Who? She pointed at him. His expression went very still. Me. Yes. You're certain? She nodded again, desperate, terrified he wouldn't believe her. How do you know? Aria's hands moved in frantic gestures, mixed wine, showed symptoms, pointed at the Serpent Queen's chambers. Morgantha. The name came out flat. You're saying she's poisoning me? Yes, please believe me. Do you have proof? Aria's shoulders sagged. No, she had suspicions, patterns, knowledge of toxins, but no proof. Ronan was silent for a long moment. Then, show me what you know. She led him to the kitchens. It was past midnight. The fires were banked, the cooks asleep. Aria moved through the darkness like a ghost, Ronan a silent shadow behind her. She stopped at the wine cellar entrance and pointed down. You think the poison's in the wine? She shook her head, pointed at the lock, mimed it being opened and closed at odd hours. Someone's accessing the cellar who shouldn't be, she nodded. Ronan studied the lock. This requires a key. Only 3 people have access. Myself, the head cook, and Lady Corinne. Aria's hand stilled. You think Corinne is involved? She shrugged helplessly. Maybe. Or someone bribed her, or stole her key. Ronan pulled his own key from his belt and unlocked the door. Stay close. They descended together. The cellar was vast, rows upon rows of barrels and bottles, centuries of accumulated wine from every corner of the kingdom. Aria led him to the section reserved for the king's private stock. She pointed at a specific bottle, then mimed pouring, drinking, and collapsing. This one? She nodded. Ronan lifted it, examining the seal. It looks untampered. Aria grabbed a clay cup from a shelf and held it out, pointed at the bottle, then at the cup, then shook her head violently. You want me to test it on something else first? Yes. Clever. He poured a small amount into the cup. But on what? Aria glanced around, then moved to a corner where the cellar cats sometimes hunted rats. She found a cage, used occasionally to trap vermin, and set it on a barrel. Inside, a rat chittered nervously. Ronan's expression was grim. You've done this before. She hadn't, but she'd studied enough to know how. They poured wine into a shallow dish and placed it inside the cage. The rat approached cautiously, sniffed, then began to drink. Within 30 seconds, it was convulsing. Within a minute, it was dead. Ronan stared at the corpse. Nightshade? Aria nodded, then held up 3 fingers. 3 types of poison? Yes. Nightshade, hemlock, and something else she couldn't name. A serpentile's toxin, probably. The combination was designed to look like natural illness. Gradual. Undetectable until it was too late. How do you know this? Ronan's voice was very quiet. Aria looked at him. I can't tell you, but her eyes must have said something because his expression shifted. Not suspicion, not anger. Something closer to recognition. You've seen this before. Someone you knew. He stopped. Someone you couldn't save. Her throat tightened. She looked away. I'm sorry. The words were rough, unexpected. And thank you. If you hadn't warned me. She met his gaze again. Nodded once. I need you to do something for me. He set the bottle down. I need you to identify every servant who has access to my food and drink. Anyone Morgantha might have bribed or threatened. Can you do that? She nodded. Good. And Aria? He caught her arm gently. Whatever your reasons for staying silent, I won't force you to explain. But know this, you're not invisible. Not anymore. The words hit harder than they should have. She pulled away and fled up the stairs, her heart racing. Behind her, Ronan remained in the cellar, staring at the dead rat, his expression unreadable. Morgantha noticed the change immediately. Over the next 3 days, Aria watched the sorceress's perfect mask begin to crack. Ronan stopped drinking wine at meals, stopped accepting food from servers she didn't recognize, started bringing his own provisions to council meetings. And every time Morgantha tried to isolate him, a private walk in the gardens, a quiet conversation in his chambers, he found excuses to refuse. Majesty, you seem distant, Morgantha purred during one dinner, her smile sharp. Have I offended you in some way? Not at all. Ronan's tone was pleasant, empty. I've simply been preoccupied with kingdom matters. Surely you understand. Of course, but an alliance requires trust, intimacy. She touched his hand. How can we build that if you won't spend time with me? Patience, my lady. These things take time. Aria, pouring wine 3 feet away, saw Morgantha's fingers tighten. The sorceress's gaze flicked to her. Just for a moment. She knows. She knows I warned him. That night, Aria returned to her quarters to find her bed destroyed. The straw mattress had been shredded, her few possessions scattered, and on the wall written in something dark and wet. Silence won't save you. Her hand shook as she stared at the message. Morgantha was escalating. Aria cleaned the blood, animal, she hoped, and remade her bed with trembling hands. She couldn't stay here, couldn't keep doing this. But she couldn't leave either. She descended to the 7th level instead. The beast cages were quiet. Her brothers slept in their twisted forms, curled in corners or pacing restlessly. Aria approached Kale's cage and pressed her forehead against the cold iron bars. I'm losing control. She's going to kill him. She's going to kill you. And I can't stop her. Kale's yellow eyes opened. He rose, massive and wrong, and pressed his muzzle against the bars opposite her head. A low rumble vibrated through the metal. Don't give up. That's what it felt like he was saying. Tears burned her eyes. She touched his fur through the bars. A sound made her freeze. Footsteps. Not Garrett this time. Lighter. Deliberate. Aria turned. Ronan stood at the chamber entrance, torch in hand, staring at the cages with an expression she couldn't read. I followed you, he said quietly. I wanted to understand why a servant girl spends every night in the most dangerous part of my castle. Aria's pulse hammered. She didn't move. Ronan approached slowly, his gaze sweeping over the 6 cages. These beasts were brought here 7 years ago, found in the wildlands, too dangerous to release, too valuable to kill. We use them for arena fights during festivals. He stopped beside her. The guards say they're unnaturally intelligent, that they seem almost human. Aria's chest tightened. And you, he looked at her. You come here every night. You touch them. Speak to them without words. They respond to you like they know you. She said nothing. Are they yours? The question was so direct, so impossible to evade, that Aria felt her entire world tilt. She could lie, shake her head, walk away. Or she could trust him. Trust the man Morgantha wants to destroy. Trust the king who could execute you for hiding royal blood. Trust someone for the first time in 9 years. Slowly she nodded. Ronan's expression didn't change. Family? She nodded again. Brothers? Yes. He exhaled, long and controlled. That's why you can't speak. It's connected to the curse. She stared at him. How did you... I've seen curses before. Frontier magic. It always demands a price. He turned back to the cages. What did you trade for their lives? Aria's hands moved instinctively, mimed sewing, pointed at her throat, held up 9 fingers. 9 years of silence in exchange for... He frowned. A way to break the curse? She nodded frantically. And if you speak before the 9 years end? She drew a finger across her throat. then pointed at her brothers. They die. Ronan's jaw tightened. Who did this? Aria pointed upward, toward the keep, toward the guest chambers, toward Morgantha. Understanding flooded his face. That's why you warned me. She cursed your family. And now she's here for... He stopped. For what? What does she want from you? Aria shook her head. I can't explain. It's too complicated. Then show me. She hesitated, then reached into her sleeve and pulled out the only thing she had, a scrap of parchment she'd carried for 9 years. Her mother's final letter, written in blood and ash. To my daughter. The relic is in your blood. She cannot take it unless you give it freely. Never speak her name. Never acknowledge her power. Survive. Save your brothers. I love you. Ronan read it twice. When he looked up, his expression was murderous. She wants something in your bloodline, and she's willing to destroy everything you love to get it. Yes. How long do you have? Aria held up one finger, then 8 more. 18 months, she nodded. And if Morgantha marries me before then? Aria mimed a crown being placed, then crushed in a fist, then pointed at him, lying dead. She'll kill me and take the kingdom. He handed back the letter. That's why you've been watching me. You're not in love with me. You're trying to keep me alive long enough to save your brothers. Aria froze. Not in love with, but the denial stuck in her throat, unspoken, because it wasn't entirely true anymore. When had it shifted? When had protecting him become more than strategy? Ronan must have seen something in her face, because his expression softened. It's all right. You don't have to explain. He looked at the cages again. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to refuse Morgantha's proposal publicly, tomorrow, at court. And then... Aria grabbed his arm, shaking her head violently. No! She mimed Morgantha's rage, then pointed at him, then herself, then her brothers, drew a line across all their throats. You think she'll kill us all if I refuse outright? Yes, she'll stop playing games. Then what do you suggest? Aria's mind raced. She needed time. Needed to finish the garments. Needed to keep Morgantha distracted. She pointed at Ronan, then herself. Then mimed walking together, talking, being seen. His eyebrows rose. You want me to court you? Heat flooded her face, but she nodded. Make her think you're interested in someone else. Make her angry, but not desperate. That's actually brilliant. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. A king falling for a servant. It would be scandalous enough to occupy her attention. Aria nodded frantically. But it puts a target on your back. She shrugged. Already there. Ronan studied her for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You're braver than most of my knights, he said quietly, and smarter than half my council. If we survive this, I'm promoting you. Aria's breath caught. But first, his expression hardened. We need to make this convincing, which means tomorrow, you're going to serve at the high table, and I'm going to notice you, publicly. She nodded, her heart pounding. Get some rest. You're going to need it. He left. Aria stood alone in the beast chamber, her brother's eyes glowing in the darkness, her mind reeling. She'd just allied herself with the Alpha King, against a sorceress who'd been alive for centuries, with 18 months to break a curse and stop a kingdom from falling. This is insane. But it was also her only chance. The court session the next morning was packed. Aria stood against the wall in her servant's gray, hands clasped, head bowed. Around her, nobles jockeyed for position, whispering behind jeweled hands, their eyes bright with gossip. Morgantha sat beside the throne, radiant in emerald silk, her smile perfect. Ronan entered last, dressed in black and silver, his presence silencing the room. My lords and ladies, he began, the Serpent Queen has honored us with a proposal of alliance. I've given it careful consideration. The room held its breath, and I've decided, he paused, to delay my answer. Confusion rippled through the crowd. Morgantha's smile didn't waver, but something flickered in her eyes. A union of kingdoms is not something to be rushed, Ronan continued. I want to ensure any decision serves Thornwind's best interests. Therefore, I'm extending the Serpent Queen's visit by 1 month, during which we'll negotiate terms more thoroughly. Polite applause. Uncertain murmurs. Morgantha rose gracefully. Your Majesty is wise to be cautious. I appreciate your thoroughness. Good. Ronan's gaze swept the room and landed on Aria. In the meantime, I have other matters to attend to. Wine. Aria's heart stopped. Every eye in the room followed his gesture. She stepped forward, pitcher trembling in her hands, and approached the throne. Ronan held out his cup. What's your name? The question was loud enough for the entire court to hear. Aria stared at him. We talked last night. You know my name. She doesn't speak, Majesty, Lady Corinne interjected smoothly. The mute girl. Aria. Aria. Ronan repeated it slowly, as if tasting the word. That's a beautiful name. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aria poured wine with shaking hands. Ronan took the cup. Thank you, Aria. You may go. She bowed and retreated, her face burning. Behind her, the whispers exploded. Did he just... The king and a mute servant? Surely not. Look at Morgantha's face. Aria risked a glance back. Morgantha sat perfectly still, her smile frozen. Her eyes locked on Aria with the intensity of a predator spotting prey. It worked. She's furious and terrified. Because if Morgantha was furious, she was also desperate, and desperate sorceresses did desperate things. The attack came that night. Aria was in the laundry quarters, working on the fifth garment by candlelight, when she heard the screams. She dropped the needle and ran. The seventh level was chaos. Guards lay unconscious, cage doors hung open, and in the center of the chamber stood Morgantha, wreathed in green fire, her face a mask of cold fury. I gave you a chance, she hissed. I let you live. I let you play your little game. Aria froze. Behind Morgantha, her brother's cages stood empty. But you had to interfere, had to whisper warnings, had to make him notice you. Morgantha's hand rose, crackling with energy. So now I'm going to take everything from you, starting with them. She snapped her fingers. Aria's brothers materialized, suspended in midair by invisible chains, their beast forms writhing, howling. One word, Morgantha said softly. Speak one word, and I'll kill them all. Right here, right now. Aria's throat worked uselessly. No? Then watch. Green lightning lanced toward Kale. Stop! The voice wasn't Aria's. Ronan stood in the doorway, sword drawn, guards pouring in behind him. Morgantha's lightning froze inches from Kale's chest. She turned, her expression venomous. You dare interrupt me. In my own castle? Yes. Ronan stepped forward. Release them. Now. Or what? You'll kill me? Morgantha laughed. You can't. I'm already dead. Have been for 300 years. But then I'll make you wish you stayed that way. He moved. Faster than Aria had ever seen a human move, his sword flashed, enchanted steel, she realized, forged with silver and blessed by frontier mages. Morgantha blocked with a shield of green fire. Clever. Someone told you what I am. Someone warned me you were a threat. Ronan's gaze flicked to Aria. I should have listened sooner. The fight was brutal. Morgantha wielded centuries of magic. Ronan wielded skill, speed, and pure relentless fury. They tore through the chamber, destroying cages, cracking stone, the air crackling with power. But Morgantha was weakening. Aria could see it, the way her shields flickered, the way her movement slowed. The poison. It's still in her system from testing it herself, because that's what sorceresses did. They tested their own toxins to build immunity. But this mixture was too complex, too potent. It was killing her. You're dying, Ronan said flatly, his sword at her throat. Slowly, painfully, your own poison. Morgantha's laugh was wet. Then I'll take you with me. She lunged, not at Ronan, at Aria, claws extended, magic blazing, murder in her eyes. Aria didn't think. She threw herself sideways, grabbed the nearest thing, a broken cage bar, and swung. It connected with Morgantha's skull. The sorceress staggered. Blood ran down her face. She stared at Aria with genuine shock. You actually... Ronan's sword took her through the heart. Morgantha crumpled. For a moment there was only silence, then her body began to dissolve, not into ash, but into serpents. Dozens of them, writhing, hissing, slithering toward the exits. "Don't let them escape!" Ronan shouted. Guards scrambled. Fires were lit. The serpents shrieked and burned. Within minutes, they were gone. All except one. A single black snake, small and fast, disappearing into the shadows. Ronan cursed. "She's not dead." That was just a vessel. Aria's legs gave out. She collapsed against the wall, shaking. Her brothers crashed to the ground as the spell holding them shattered. They were still beasts, still cursed, but alive. Ronan crouched beside her. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "That was incredibly stupid." She smiled weakly. "You're welcome." He laughed, sharp, startled. "Yeah, thank you." He stood, offering his hand. "Come on, we need to move fast. If Morgantha's still alive, she'll regroup. And next time—" The ground trembled. From above, from the keep, came a sound like thunder. Ronan's expression went white. No, she wouldn't. An explosion rocked the castle. Screams echoed down the stairwell. "She's attacking the court!" Ronan was already running. "Everyone above ground is in danger." Aria grabbed his arm, pointed at her brothers, then at herself. "I'll protect them. You protect your people." He hesitated, then nodded. "Bar the doors. Don't let anyone in except me." He was gone. Aria turned to her brothers. 6 pairs of eyes stared back at her. She had 18 months left. But Morgantha had just declared war, and Aria had a terrible feeling time had just run out. The ceiling above them groaned like a dying animal. Aria hauled herself upright, her brothers circling her in their monstrous forms. 6 nightmares of fur and scale and antler, their eyes fixed on the barred door Ronan had disappeared through. Another explosion shook the castle. Stone dust rained down. Somewhere overhead, wood splintered and metal screamed. Kale pressed against her side, massive and trembling. His wolf stag head swung toward the stairs, a low growl building in his chest. He wants to fight. They all do. But they couldn't. Not like this. Not cursed and mindless with rage during daylight. The beast forms were strongest at night, most controllable in darkness. In chaos, with adrenaline flooding their systems, they'd be as dangerous to allies as enemies. Aria grabbed Kale's antlers and forced him to look at her. She shook her head hard. "Stay," he snarled but obeyed. The castle shuddered again. This time, part of the ceiling collapsed. Not here, but close enough that Aria heard the crash, felt the vibration through the stone floor. Screams filtered down from above, thin and desperate. Her hands clenched into fists. Ronan's up there, fighting alone. No, not alone. He had guards, knights, an entire court of warriors. But Morgantha wasn't truly dead. That thing upstairs, whatever was attacking, was either another vessel or something worse. A backup plan, a final contingency. Aria's mind raced through everything she knew about Serpent Isle's magic. The legends said Morgantha had bound her soul to multiple anchors, living vessels she could inhabit if one body died. Destroying one form meant nothing if the others survived. To truly kill her, you had to destroy all the vessels, or destroy the anchor itself, the relic. Aria's breath caught. The relic her mother had died protecting, the thing Morgantha wanted so desperately. It wasn't just valuable, it was tied to Morgantha's immortality somehow, a piece of the original binding spell, and it was in Aria's blood. She looked down at her hands, scarred from 9 years of working nightshade and hemlock, marked with tiny burns from enchanted thread. But underneath the damage, a knock at the barred door made everyone freeze. "Aria, it's Ronan. Let me in." She recognized his voice immediately, but something was wrong, too calm, too steady. Kale's growl deepened. Aria approached the door slowly, pressed her ear against the wood. "Aria, please, the castle's falling apart. We need to move your brothers to a safer location." "We, not I." "Open the door." She stepped back, shook her head at the wood. A pause. Then, "You don't trust me." She said nothing. "Smart girl." The voice shifted, still Ronan's, but layered now with something else, something ancient and cold. "But it won't matter. I'll burn through this door if I have to." Green light seeped through the cracks in the wood. Aria's heart slammed against her ribs. She grabbed the nearest cage bar, iron and silver alloy, one of the few metals that could disrupt magic, and wedged it against the door as a brace. Her brothers formed a wall behind her, snarling. "Last chance, little princess." The door exploded inward. Not Ronan, not exactly. He stood in the doorway, but his eyes were solid green, his skin marked with black veins, his movements jerky and wrong, a puppet on strings. Morgantha's voice poured from his mouth. "Did you really think killing one body would stop me? I've been preparing for this moment for decades." She'd possessed him. "No, no, no, no. Don't look so horrified. He's still in here, still conscious, still screaming." Morgantha smiled with Ronan's face. "I'm going to make him watch while I kill you, while I kill your brothers, while I take everything." Aria backed up. Her brothers charged. Fenrir reached her first, serpentine and fast. But Morgantha moved Ronan's body with inhuman speed. His fist connected with Fenrir's skull. Bone cracked. The beast went down. "I've inhabited kings before. Warriors, generals, their bodies remember how to fight." She advanced on Theron next. "Yours won't last long." Theron lunged. Morgantha sidestepped and drove Ronan's elbow into his spine. The beast collapsed, wheezing. One by one, she tore through them, not killing, disabling, breaking, making them watch. Aria grabbed the iron bar she'd used as a door brace and swung at Morgantha's head. The sorceress caught it mid-swing. "There she is, the brave little mouse." She yanked the bar away and backhanded Aria across the face. Pain exploded through her skull. She hit the ground hard, vision swimming. Morgantha crouched over her, Ronan's face twisted into something monstrous. "I want you to understand something. Your mother thought she could hide the relic by binding it to your bloodline. She thought making it part of you would protect it." Aria tried to crawl away. Morgantha stepped on her hand. "But all she did was make you a target, because I don't need you to give me the relic. I just need to take your blood, all of it." She grabbed Aria by the throat and lifted her off the ground. "And once I have it, once I've consumed the anchor, I'll be truly immortal, untouchable, and Thornwind will be the first of many kingdoms to fall." Aria's vision darkened. Her lungs screamed. She clawed at Ronan's hands, at the hands she'd watched pour wine, sign documents, touch her hair with unexpected gentleness. "He's still in there. Fight, please fight." Morgantha's grip tightened. "Any last words?" "Oh wait, you can't speak. How tragic." Something shifted behind Morgantha's eyes. For just a second, the green flickered. Ronan's gray broke through, his voice raw and desperate. "Aria, run!" Then the green slammed back, but his hands loosened just enough. Aria drove her knee up between his legs. Morgantha screamed, a sound of rage, not pain, and dropped her. Aria hit the ground gasping, scrambled back, her mind racing. He's fighting. He's still fighting, which meant the possession wasn't complete, wasn't absolute. Morgantha could control his body, but not perfectly. Not if he resisted. "You little—" Morgantha advanced again, furious now, sloppy. "I'm going to make this slow. I'm going to—" The castle shook. Not from an explosion this time. From below. Deep, deep below, something was waking up. Morgantha froze. "What?" The floor cracked. Black vines burst through the stone, thick as a man's arm, covered in thorns, pulsing with dark red light. They wrapped around Morgantha's ankles, her wrists, yanking her back. She shrieked, "No, this isn't possible! The binding was—" More vines erupted. Dozens. Hundreds. They filled the chamber like a living nightmare, wrapping around the walls, the cages, pulling Morgantha toward the center of the room where the floor had split open entirely. Aria stared. She knew those vines. Bloodthorn. The plant my mother used to hide the relic. It had been here all along. Growing in the bedrock beneath the castle, dormant, waiting, and now it was awake. Morgantha struggled against the vines, Ronan's body contorting. "You think this will stop me? I'll just—" A vine pierced through his chest. Aria screamed, no sound, just air, and lunged forward. But the vine withdrew immediately. No blood, no wound. Because it hadn't been aiming for Ronan. It had been aiming for the presence inside him. Green light erupted from his mouth, his eyes, his skin. Morgantha's essence being ripped out by force. She manifested above him, a spectral form of pure rage, fighting the vines that dragged her down. "This isn't over," her voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "I'll come back. I always come back." The vines pulled her into the earth. The crack sealed shut. Silence fell like a hammer. Ronan collapsed. Aria crawled to him, her hands shaking, checking for a pulse. There. Weak. But there. His eyes opened. Gray, clear, his. "Aria?" She nodded frantically, tears streaming down her face. What happened?" She couldn't explain, could barely process it herself. But they didn't have time. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. Guards poured into the chamber, weapons drawn, taking in the destruction, the broken cages, the unconscious beasts, the king on the ground. "Seize her!" Lady Corinne appeared behind them, her face twisted with fury. "She attacked the king. She unleashed these monsters." "No!" Ronan tried to rise. "She didn't." "Look at her," Corinne pointed at Aria. "Covered in your blood, standing over you with these creatures. She's been hiding them this whole time, using them to—" "That's enough." Ronan's voice was steel. He forced himself upright, swaying. "Aria saved my life. Did she? Or did she orchestrate this entire thing?" Corinne's eyes glittered. "Think, Majesty. A mute servant who appears out of nowhere 9 years ago. Who spends every night with these beasts. Who convinces you the Serpent Queen is a threat. What if she's the threat?" Murmurs rippled through the guards. Aria's stomach dropped. What if she planned this? Killed Morgantha to eliminate a rival and take the throne herself? "That's insane," Ronan snapped. "Is it? Look around you. The castle is in ruins. Half the court is dead or wounded, and at the center of it all, her." The guards closed in. Ronan stepped between them and Aria. "Stand down. That's an order." "Majesty, with respect." The captain of the guard hesitated. "We need answers. If she's innocent, she'll survive questioning." "She can't be questioned. She doesn't speak." "Then perhaps it's time we found other methods." The implication hung in the air like a noose. Ronan's hand went to his sword. "Touch her, and I'll execute every one of you myself." "Ronan," Lord Merrick pushed through the crowd, his expression grave. "We're not questioning your judgment, but the court is terrified. They need to see justice. They need someone to blame." Then blame Morgantha." "Morgantha's gone. This girl is here." Merrick's voice softened. "If you protect her without proof of her innocence, they'll turn on you. They'll say you're compromised, bewitched. I don't care what they say. You should. Because if they lose faith in you, the kingdom fractures, and everything we fought for falls apart." Ronan looked at Aria. She saw the conflict in his eyes. Duty versus instinct, crown versus heart. She made the choice for him. She stepped around him, held out her wrists. "Aria, no!" She shook her head, pointed at him, then at the stairs. "Go. Save your kingdom. I won't leave you to—" She pressed her hand to his chest, over his heart. "I trust you. Now trust me." The guards seized her. Ronan looked like he might tear them apart. But Aria caught his gaze one more time, pleading. "Let them take me. It's the only way." He closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were empty of emotion, the king's mask firmly in place. "Take her to the holding cells, not the dungeons, the noble quarters. She's to be treated as a guest, not a prisoner. And those beasts—" He gestured at her brothers. "Put them back in the cages. Double the guards. No one enters without my permission. And if she tries to escape, she won't." His certainty was the only thing keeping Aria from panicking. They dragged her up the stairs, through corridors filled with debris and blood, past bodies covered in sheets, past survivors who stared at her with fear and hatred. The mute servant, the cursed girl, the one who brought monsters into our home. She'd gone from invisible to infamous in a single night. The holding cell was clean, comfortable, more like a guest room with bars than a dungeon, but it was still a cage. Aria sat on the narrow bed and stared at the wall. Everything was falling apart. Morgantha wasn't dead, just contained, temporarily. The bloodthorn vines had pulled her into the earth, but ancient magic like hers didn't die easily. She'd find a way back. And when she did, Aria would be trapped, helpless. Her brothers would be caged forever. Ronan would be alone against a sorceress who'd already proven she could possess him. I have to finish the garments. But how? She had no access to her materials, no way to work in secret. No. Well, what a mess you've made. Aria's head snapped up. A woman stood outside the bars, tall, ancient, wrapped in furs that seemed to shift and move on their own. Not human. Definitely not human. You don't know me, the woman said, but I knew your mother. I'm the one who taught her how to hide the relic in the first place. Aria stood slowly. My name is Valdra. I'm a frontier witch, and I'm here to offer you a deal. Aria's hands moved. What kind of deal? Valdra smiled. I can break your curse right now. No 9 years, no garments, no conditions. I can give you back your voice and free your brothers immediately. Aria's heart stopped. But in exchange, you have to give me the relic, the anchor in your blood. Without it, Morgantha will eventually reform. But with it, I can bind her permanently, lock her in the earth for eternity. It's a trick. It has to be. It's not a trick. I'm offering you freedom, your brother's freedom, a chance to save the king you clearly care about. Valdra leaned closer. All you have to do is trust me. Aria's mind raced. Everything she'd worked for, 9 years of silence, 9 years of suffering, could end right now. But giving up the relic meant losing the only leverage she had against Morgantha, meant trusting a complete stranger with something her mother had died to protect. I know what you're thinking, Valdra said. Your mother didn't trust anyone either, and look where that got her. Dead, her children cursed, her legacy in ruins. The words hit like daggers. Sometimes, little princess, trust is the only weapon you have left. Aria looked at her hands, at the scars, at the blood under her nails from fighting Morgantha. Then she looked at Valdra and made a decision that would change everything. She shook her head. Valdra's expression hardened. You're refusing. Aria nodded. Even knowing your brothers will stay beasts? Even knowing Morgantha will come back? Yes. You're a fool. Maybe. But she was a fool who'd survived 9 years on instinct and determination. And her instinct was screaming that Valdra's offer was poison, dressed as salvation. Fine. Valdra stepped back. Then you're on your own. And when Morgantha returns, and she will, don't say I didn't warn you. She vanished, not walked away. Vanished. Aria sank onto the bed, shaking. She'd just refused the only offer of help she was likely to get. Please let that have been the right choice. 3 days passed. 3 days of isolation, of silence within silence, of watching guards change shifts, of eating food that might be poisoned, of staring at walls and wondering if she'd die in this cell. No one visited except the guards. Not Ronan. Not anyone. On the 3rd night, she heard voices. Can't keep her locked up forever. The king refuses to pass judgment. Because he's compromised. Everyone can see it. Then the council needs to act. Aria pressed her ear to the door. A trial. Tomorrow. Public. Let the court decide her fate. And if they find her guilty? Execution. Standard procedure for treason. Her blood turned to ice. A trial meant testimony, meant evidence, meant she'd have no way to defend herself because she couldn't speak. She'd be convicted in minutes. That night, someone slipped a note under her door. They're going to kill you, but I can get you out. There's a passage behind the east wall. Knock twice if you want my help. Aria stared at the note. Escape. Ronan was offering her escape, but if she ran, her brothers would be executed as dangerous animals. The kingdom would fracture. Morgantha would return to a realm in chaos. Everything her mother had fought for would be lost. She crumpled the note, knocked once on the door. No, I'm staying. A long silence, then footsteps walking away. She'd just refused rescue. Now she had to survive a trial she couldn't defend herself in. Think, there has to be a way. Her fingers traced patterns on the stone floor, the same patterns she'd stitched into the garments, protection sigils, truth marks, ancient symbols her grandmother had taught her. What if I could show them the truth? Not with words, but with proof. She had nothing, no evidence, no witnesses, no... Wait. The bloodthorn vines. They'd responded to her blood, because the relic was inside her, which meant her blood carried magic, visible magic. If she could demonstrate that, show the court what she was, what her mother had hidden, they'd understand she wasn't the enemy. They'd see Morgantha was the threat, but it would mean revealing everything, her heritage, her bloodline, the curse. It would mean becoming visible in a way she'd spent 9 years avoiding. Do it. You're out of options. Oh. The trial was held in the Great Hall. Every surviving noble packed the space, hundreds of them, dressed in court finery, their faces hungry for spectacle, for blood. Aria was led to the center of the room in chains. Ronan sat on his throne, his expression carved from ice. Their eyes met for a heartbeat. She saw the barely controlled rage in his gaze, the helplessness. She gave him the smallest nod. Trust me. Lady Corinne stood as prosecutor. Aria Vale, you stand accused of conspiring with dark forces to destabilize the kingdom, of harboring dangerous beasts, of attacking the king. How do you plead? Aria said nothing. Let the record show the accused refuses to defend herself. Because she can't speak. Ronan's voice cracked like a whip. How is this justice? Then let her provide evidence of her innocence another way. Corinne smiled coldly. But she won't. Because she can't. Aria raised her chained hands. The room went silent. She pointed at Corinne, then mimed drinking, eating, sleeping. What is she? Aria repeated the gestures more forcefully, then pointed at the king. Is she accusing Lady Corinne of something? Lord Merrick frowned. Aria nodded frantically, then drew a line across her throat. Of murder? She nodded again, pointed at Morgantha's empty seat, then at Corinne. She's saying Corinne worked with the Serpent Queen? Ronan stood. Is that true? Aria nodded desperately. Ridiculous. Corinne's face flushed. She's making wild accusations to save herself. Then you won't mind proving your innocence. Ronan gestured to the guards. Search Lady Corinne's chambers, now. This is an outrage. I've served this throne for... Do it! The guards left. Tension stretched like wire. 15 minutes later, they returned carrying a small wooden box. Inside, vials of poison. Correspondence in Morgantha's handwriting. A ledger listing payments to servants and guards. Proof. Corinne had been bought, had been poisoning the king slowly for months, had orchestrated the chaos to help Morgantha take the throne. The court erupted. Corinne lunged for the exit. Guards seized her. You little bitch, she screamed at Aria. You've ruined everything. Years of planning, all because you couldn't mind your own... Ronan backhanded her across the face. Take her to the dungeons, 7th level. Let her keep the beasts company. They dragged her away, still screaming. The hall slowly quieted. Ronan descended from the throne, walked to Aria, unlocked her chains himself. You knew, he said quietly. All this time you knew. She nodded. And you couldn't tell me because of the curse. She nodded again. He touched her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. You are the bravest person I've ever met, the crowd murmured. Which is why. He turned to address them all. I'm declaring Aria Vale innocent of all charges. Furthermore, I'm granting her the title of Royal Investigator. She's proven herself more loyal to this crown than half my council. Shocked silence. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Within moments, the entire hall was applauding. Aria stood frozen, overwhelmed. Ronan leaned close, his voice for her alone. Now, how do we kill Morgantha permanently? Before Aria could respond, the floor cracked. Green light erupted from the stone. Black vines burst upward, but wrong now, corrupted, dripping with poison. And from the center of the chaos rose Morgantha, not spectral anymore, fully formed, real, stronger than before. Miss me? Her smile was death itself. You thought trapping me would work? I've been eating my way through your wards for 3 days, consuming the bloodthorn's power, making it mine. The vines lashed out, guards died screaming, nobles fled. Ronan drew his sword. Everyone out, now! But Morgantha raised her hand, and every exit sealed with vines. No one leaves. You're all going to watch while I take what's mine. Her eyes locked on Aria. "Come here, little princess. It's time to bleed." Aria didn't run. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, to hide, to disappear into the chaos erupting around her. But she'd spent 9 years running, 9 years invisible, 9 years letting fear dictate her choices. Not anymore. She stepped forward. Ronan grabbed her arm. "What are you doing?" She pulled free, her eyes locked on Morgantha. The sorceress stood wreathed in corrupted blood-thorn vines, black and pulsing with stolen magic, dripping poison that hissed when it hit the marble floor. Around them, the great hall had become a cage. Nobles pressed against vine-sealed doors, screaming. Guards hacked at the barriers with swords that barely scratched the surface. "Finally," Morgantha smiled. "Some courage. Come closer, little princess. Let's finish what your mother started." Aria walked forward, each step deliberate, measured. Behind her, Ronan swore and followed, sword drawn. "If you're planning something, now would be the time." Aria's hands moved rapidly. "Keep her talking. I need time." Time for what? She didn't answer, couldn't, but her mind was racing through every story her grandmother had told her, every scrap of frontier magic she'd learned, every pattern she'd woven into those cursed garments. The bloodthorn had responded to her blood because the relic inside her carried ancient power. Power Morgantha wanted. Power that had been bound to the Vale bloodline for generations. But what if it wasn't just defensive magic? What if her mother had hidden something more dangerous inside her? "You know what I find fascinating?" Morgantha circled them slowly, vines writhing around her like serpents. "Your mother was brilliant, truly. She bound the relic so completely to your bloodline that even I can't extract it without your willing consent." Her smile sharpened. "But there are ways to manufacture consent, pain, for instance, or watching everyone you love die slowly." "You won't touch her." Ronan moved between them. "Sweet, but stupid." Morgantha flicked her wrist. A vine shot forward, wrapped around Ronan's throat, and yanked him off his feet. He slammed into a marble column hard enough to crack stone. The sword clattered from his grip. "Ronan!" The cry came from Lord Merrick, trapped against the sealed doors. Aria's heart stopped. She lunged toward him. Morgantha's hand shot out, palm forward. Invisible force slammed into Aria's chest, stopping her mid-step. "Not yet. First, I want you to understand something." The sorceress walked closer. "Your mother thought she was protecting the relic by hiding it in you, but she was actually protecting you, because as long as the relic's inside you, you're valuable, untouchable. No one would dare kill the vessel." Aria's chest tightened. "But she made one mistake." Morgantha leaned in. "She assumed you'd always choose silence, always choose the safe path. She never imagined you'd become this." She gestured at Aria's defiant stance. "Brave, visible, willing to sacrifice yourself." The vine around Ronan's throat tightened. His face was turning purple. "So, here's my offer, revised. Give me the relic willingly, and I'll let him live. Let everyone in this room live. Refuse, and I'll kill him first. Then your brothers. Then every single person in this castle while you watch. And when you're broken and empty and begging for death, then I'll take your blood." Aria's hands shook. She looked at Ronan. His eyes met hers, gray and fierce even while dying. He shook his head minutely. "Don't." She looked at the crowd. Terrified nobles, desperate guards. People who'd ignored her for 9 years, who'd treated her like furniture, who'd never once seen her as human. But they were still people. Still worth saving. She turned back to Morgantha, nodded once. "What?" Ronan choked out. "No? Finally." Morgantha released him. He collapsed, gasping. "Smart girl. Now this will hurt, a lot, but at least it'll be quick." Aria held out her wrists. Morgantha produced a ceremonial dagger, obsidian and silver, carved with runes that made Aria's vision blur. "Ancient magic requires ancient methods. I need your blood freely given, your consent spoken aloud, and your life force willing to transfer." She pressed the blade to Aria's palm. "Say the words. I give freely what was bound to me." Aria opened her mouth and screamed. Not words, not speech, just raw, primal sound. 9 years of silence erupting in a single explosive release. The sound was wrong, too loud, too resonant. It echoed not from her throat, but from everywhere at once. The walls, the floor, the air itself. Because it wasn't just a scream, it was a trigger. Every protection sigil Aria had ever stitched into those hidden garments, every pattern her grandmother had taught her, every drop of her blood woven into nightshade thread over 9 years of desperate work, all of it activated simultaneously. The magic her mother had bound inside her wasn't just the relic, it was a weapon, and Aria had just armed it. The floor exploded, not with corrupted vines this time, with pure white gold light that burned away Morgantha's darkness like dawn destroying shadow. The bloodthorn vines shrieked and withered, the seals on the doors shattered, and from the light emerged 6 figures, not beasts, men. Aria's brothers stood in the great hall, fully human for the first time in 9 years, their cursed forms burned away by the release of power. Kale at the front, tall and scarred, antler marks still visible on his temples but fading. Fenrir beside him, serpent scale tattoos crawling up his arms. Theron, Cade, Lysander, and little Ash, no longer 7 but 16, staring at his human hands in wonder. What? Morgantha staggered back. That's impossible. The curse can't break without 9 years of silence and 6 completed garments? Aria's voice cracked through the hall, raw from disuse, but unmistakably hers. My mother was clever. She knew you'd come for me eventually, so she didn't just hide the relic. She turned me into a living spell. She stepped forward, light still pouring from her skin. Every moment of silence was a charge. Every stitch in those garments was a binding. Every drop of blood I gave was fuel. And when I chose to scream instead of speak, when I chose defiance over submission, I completed the spell. Morgantha's face twisted. You little... The curse wasn't on my brothers. It was on you. Aria's smile was sharp as glass. My mother cursed you 9 years ago through me, bound you to the bloodthorn, made sure that every time you tried to take the relic, you'd only make the trap stronger. That's why you waited, why you watched. You were hoping I'd break the spell by speaking too soon, freeing you from the binding. That's insane, is it? Kale's voice was rough from disuse, but strong. He and his brothers formed a wall around Aria. Or is it exactly the kind of long-game vengeance a frontier witch would plan? Morgantha's eyes darted between them, calculating. It doesn't matter. I've consumed enough of the Bloodthorn's power to what? Fight all of us? Ronan was back on his feet, sword retrieved, blood running from his temple. You're outnumbered, weakened, and the relic you wanted just became a weapon against you. I've lived 300 years. I've toppled kingdoms. You've lost. Aria's voice was steady now, strong. Because you made the same mistake everyone makes. You assumed silence meant weakness. You assumed invisibility meant powerlessness. You never saw me as a threat because you never bothered to actually see me. The light around her intensified. And now you're going to pay for that. She thrust her bleeding palm forward. The relic inside her, the anchor Morgantha had spent decades hunting, erupted outward. Not as an object, but as pure concentrated magic. It slammed into Morgantha like a battering ram, burning through her stolen power, her corrupted vines, her immortal flesh. The sorceress screamed. The bloodthorn vines that had sustained her turned against her, wrapping around her limbs, dragging her down. But these vines were clean now, restored by the relic's power. They pulled her toward the crack in the floor, toward the earth that had held her prisoner 3 days ago. No, I won't. I can't. Morgantha clawed at the marble, her fingernails tearing. This isn't how it ends. I'm eternal. I'm finished. Aria knelt beside her. My mother sends her regards. She pressed her bleeding palm to Morgantha's forehead. The relic's magic poured directly into the sorceress, not to empower her, to unmake her. Every vessel Morgantha had ever inhabited, every body she'd stolen, every soul she'd consumed, every anchor she'd created, all of it unraveled simultaneously. Her physical form began to disintegrate, starting with her extremities and working inward. You can't kill me. I'll come back. I always come back. Not this time. Aria's voice was pitiless. The relic doesn't just bind, it erases. Every version of you across every vessel is being destroyed right now. You won't resurrect, you won't regenerate, you'll just stop. Morgantha's scream cut off mid-breath. She crumbled to ash, the vines pulled the ash into the earth, the crack sealed shut. Silence fell over the great hall. Aria remained kneeling, her palm still bleeding, light fading from her skin. She felt empty, hollowed out, like she'd poured her entire soul into that final strike. Strong hands lifted her. Ronan pulled her against his chest, his arms tight around her, his heart hammering against her ear. "You're insane. Brilliant and insane." "I know." Her voice was barely a whisper now. Speaking felt foreign, strange. "Did it work?" "See for yourself." He turned her to face the room. Every noble, every guard, every survivor stood frozen, staring, not with fear anymore, with awe. Then someone started clapping. Lord Merrick, the old warrior who'd questioned her loyalty days ago, then another, and another. Within seconds, the entire hall erupted in applause. Aria swayed, the world tilted. "I've got you," Ronan steadied her. "Brothers, help me get her to my chambers. Someone fetch the healers." Kale appeared at her other side. His face, his human face, older and harder than she remembered but still unmistakably her brother, was wet with tears. "You did it, little sister. You actually did it. We're free." Ash's voice, young and wondering, came from somewhere behind them. "We're free," Fenrir confirmed. Aria let them carry her, let the exhaustion take her, let herself for the first time in 9 years be weak, because she'd earned it. She woke to sunlight, real sunlight streaming through tall windows, warming her face. For a moment she didn't remember where she was. Then details filtered in, silk sheets, carved furniture, the scent of medicine and herbs. The king's chambers. She sat up too quickly. Pain lanced through her head. "Easy." Ronan appeared beside the bed, pressing a cup of water into her hands. "You've been unconscious for 2 days. The healers said you drained yourself completely." "My brothers?" Her voice was still rough, but getting stronger. "Fine. More than fine. They're in the guest wing, eating everything in the kitchen and terrifying the servants with requests for proper clothes." He smiled. "Kale's already challenged 3 guards to sparring matches. Fenrir's charming half the court ladies. It's chaos." Relief flooded through her. "And Morgantha?" "Gone. Completely. The frontier witches confirmed it. No trace of her essence remains anywhere. You erased her from existence." His expression sobered, though they're a bit concerned about what that cost you. "What do you mean?" "The relic. When you used it to destroy Morgantha, you burned it out. It's gone, Aria. The power your mother hid inside you, it's spent." She looked at her palm. The cut had healed, leaving only a faint silver scar. "Am I—" She swallowed. "Am I still human? Yes. Magical? No." Ronan sat on the edge of the bed. "The frontier witches said you're completely ordinary now. No ancient bloodline power. No mystical protection. Just you." She should feel devastated. Her mother had died to protect that relic, had sacrificed everything to keep it safe. Instead, she felt lighter. "Good," she said. "I never wanted to be special. I just wanted my brothers back." Ronan laughed. "Well, you got them. Along with a kingdom's worth of gratitude, a royal title, and marriage proposals from at least 6 nobles who suddenly find you fascinating." Her face burned. "What?" "Apparently nearly dying to save everyone makes you very attractive." He grinned. "Who knew?" "That's ridiculous. I'm a servant. You're a princess. Your brother confirmed it. The Vale family was minor nobility before they fled to the frontier, which means you have a legitimate claim to a title." He paused. "Which means courting you isn't scandalous anymore." Her heart stuttered. "Courting? Unless you'd prefer I stop. I know we started as a strategic distraction for Morgantha, but..." He took her hand carefully. "I'd like it to be real, if you're interested." Aria stared at him. At this man who'd been a distant figure on a battlement when she was 10, who'd become a symbol of everything she needed to protect, who'd somehow, impossibly, become someone she trusted more than anyone except her brothers. "I don't know how to be courted," she admitted. "I don't know how to be a princess or a noble or anything except invisible." "Then we'll figure it out together." He squeezed her hand. "No more hiding, Aria. No more silence. From now on, you get to be seen. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they felt like freedom. Okay, she whispered. Okay. He smiled, genuine and warm, and so different from the cold king she'd first observed 9 years ago. Good. Now, there's a council meeting in an hour where we need to discuss rebuilding the parts of the castle Morgantha destroyed, managing the political fallout from Corinne's execution, and figuring out how to explain why the king is suddenly courting a former servant. He stood. Think you can handle being visible for that long? I survived 9 years of silence, a sorceress, and having my soul ripped apart to save a kingdom. She threw back the covers. I can handle a council meeting. That's my girl. He left to give her privacy to dress. Aria moved to the window and looked out over Thornwind Keep. The frontier stretched beyond the walls, wild and dangerous and beautiful. The same landscape she'd crossed as a terrified 10-year-old, fleeing a curse and carrying impossible hope. She'd survived. More than that, she'd won. A knock at the door. Aria, it's us. Can we come in? Her brothers. She opened the door to find all 6 of them crowded in the hallway, human and whole and alive. Cale pulled her into a crushing hug immediately. Then Fenrir. Then all of them, until she was buried in a tangle of arms and laughter and tears. Thank you, Cale murmured into her hair. We couldn't say it before. Couldn't tell you how much. I know. She pulled back, looking at each of them. I know. So what now? Ash asked. Do we go home? Try to rebuild the village? The village is gone, Theron said quietly. Burned 10 years ago. There's nothing to go back to. Then we stay here. Aria's voice was firm. We make a new home, together. And deal with politics? Cade grimaced. Court intrigue? Noble nonsense? After fighting a 300-year-old sorceress, how hard can it be? They laughed. But underneath the humor, Aria felt something shift, a foundation settling into place. She had her brothers, she had her voice, she had a place in this kingdom that she'd earned with blood and silence and unbreakable will. And she had a king who looked at her like she hung the moon. Not bad for a girl who'd started as invisible. The council meeting was exactly as tedious as Ronan had warned. Aria sat at the long table, her brothers flanking her, while nobles argued about reconstruction budgets and trade agreements and whether the execution of Lady Corinne had been lawful. She stayed quiet, listening, observing. Old habits. And what of the beasts? Lord Harwick, an elderly noble with a thick beard, gestured at Aria's brothers. They were crown property. If they're human now, what's their legal status? They're free citizens, Ronan said flatly, and members of the Vale family, which is now under crown protection. But the arena fights. We've lost valuable entertainment. Find different entertainment, Ronan cut him off. This isn't negotiable. Harwick subsided, grumbling. Another noble cleared her throat. Your Majesty, there's also the matter of succession. The room went very quiet. What about it? Ronan's tone was neutral. You're 26 and unmarried. The kingdom needs an heir. With the Serpent Queen gone, you'll need to consider other alliance marriages. I'm considering one. Ronan's gaze flicked to Aria. Just not the kind you're thinking of. Aria's stomach dropped. Every eye in the room turned to her. You can't be serious, Harwick sputtered. She's a princess of the Vale bloodline, Ronan interrupted. A woman who saved this kingdom when my own council was selling me out to a sorceress. A strategist, a fighter, and someone I actually trust. He stood. So yes, Lord Harwick, I'm very serious. This is madness. The court will never accept. The court will accept what I tell them to accept. Ronan's voice was steel. Unless you'd like to challenge me directly? Harwick paled. No, Your Majesty. Good. Then we're done here. He strode out of the room. The council sat in stunned silence. Aria forced herself to breathe normally, to stand calmly, to walk out with her head high. Inside, she was screaming. Her brothers caught up to her in the hallway. Did he just... Fenrir started. Propose? Lysander finished. In front of the entire council? Cale added. Without asking you first? Theron's expression was caught between amusement and outrage. Aria covered her face with her hands. I'm going to kill him. Get in line, Ash muttered, as she... They found Ronan in the training yard, hacking at a practice dummy with more force than necessary. That, Aria called out, was the worst proposal in the history of proposals. He turned, breathing hard. I panicked. You panicked? You face down sorceresses without blinking, but asking me to marry you makes you panic? Yes! He threw the practice sword down. Because I care what you think. I don't care what those nobles think. Her anger deflated slightly. You can't just announce something like that without talking to me first. You're right. I'm sorry. He ran a hand through his hair. Let me do this properly. He dropped to one knee. Aria's heart stopped. Ronan, I didn't mean... Aria Vale. You are the bravest, most stubborn, most brilliant person I've ever met. You saved my life. You saved my kingdom. You've been watching me for 9 years, and I've only been seeing you for weeks, but I can't imagine my future without you in it. He looked up at her. Will you marry me? She stared at him. At this powerful, terrifying king kneeling in dirt and sunlight, looking at her like she was the only thing that mattered. You barely know me, she whispered. Then we'll spend the rest of our lives fixing that. I don't know how to be a queen. I'll teach you. I'm going to make mistakes, embarrass you. I've spent 9 years silent. I don't know how to navigate court politics. Neither did I when I started. We'll figure it out together. She looked at her brothers. They were grinning like idiots. Say yes, Cale urged, before he's forced to stay on his knees all day. Aria looked back at Ronan, at the man who'd given her protection when she had nothing, who'd trusted her when no one else would, who'd looked at her and seen not a broken girl, but a fighter. On one condition, she said, anything. No more public announcements without talking to me first. He laughed. Deal. Then yes, I'll marry you. He stood and kissed her, gentle and sweet, and nothing like the dramatic gestures he favored in court. It was perfect. Around them, her brothers whooped. Guards applauded. Servants who'd gathered to watch cheered. And Aria, formerly invisible, formerly silent, formerly nothing, allowed herself to be seen, to be celebrated, to be loved. The castle still needed rebuilding. The kingdom still needed healing. There were politics to navigate, allies to reassure, and 1,000 complications waiting in the wings. But for the first time in 9 years, Aria felt like she could handle it. Because she wasn't alone anymore. She had her voice, her family, her future. And she'd fought too hard to let any of it go now. The wedding was scheduled for 3 months later. 3 months that felt simultaneously endless and far too short. Aria spent the time learning to be visible in ways that made her skin crawl, sitting through etiquette lessons with ancient tutors who looked at her like she was a particularly challenging puzzle, attending state dinners where nobles watched her every move for signs of inadequacy, standing beside Ronan during public audiences while whispers followed her like shadows. She used to scrub our floors. A servant! He's marrying a servant. Royal blood or not, she'll never be one of us. The words stung less than they should have. Maybe because she'd spent 9 years being invisible. Being talked about was almost an improvement over being ignored. Almost. You're gripping that wine glass like you want to strangle it, Ronan murmured during one particularly tedious dinner. The crystal is expensive. Aria loosened her grip. Lady Blackwood just asked me if I knew which fork to use for fish, while I was actively using the fish fork. She's testing you. They all are. I'm aware. She took a deliberate sip of wine. What happens when I fail? You won't. How can you be so sure? He looked at her, his gray eyes steady. Because you survived 9 years of something that would have broken most people. A few snobbish nobles aren't going to take you down. She wanted to believe him, but doubt was a persistent companion these days. That night, she found Cale in the training yard, working through sword forms in the moonlight. He'd taken to warrior training with the same intensity he brought to everything. Absolute focus, relentless determination. Can't sleep either? She asked. He didn't stop moving. I keep expecting to wake up with claws, with antlers, to discover this was all a dream. It's not. I know. He finished the sequence and lowered the practice sword. But part of me is still in that cage, still beast. I don't know how to be human anymore. Aria sat on a training bench. You have time to figure it out. Do I? He joined her. We all do? Because Fenrir's already talking about leaving, exploring the continent, seeing what he missed during 9 years locked in darkness. And you? I don't know what I want. His voice was rough. Except to make sure you're safe. That's been my job since you were born, protecting you. Now you're marrying a king, living in a castle full of people who'd stab you in the back for political gain, and I can't— He stopped. I can't protect you from this. I don't need you to. Yes, you do. You're still— He gestured helplessly. You're still my little sister, still the girl who used to hide behind me when strangers came to the village. How am I supposed to just let you walk into danger alone? The same way I let you turn into a beast alone for 9 years. Her voice was gentle. By trusting that I'm strong enough to handle it. Kale was silent for a long moment. You're stronger than all of us combined. You know that, right? I don't feel strong. That's because you're too busy being terrified to notice how terrifying you are to everyone else. He smiled slightly. The nobles are afraid of you, Aria. That's why they test you. They're trying to find weakness because your strength scares them. I was a servant. You were a spy, a healer, a strategist, a girl who wove curses into clothing and kept 6 beasts alive through sheer determination. He stood. You were never just a servant, and the sooner you believe that, the easier this will get. He left her alone in the moonlight. Aria stared at her hands, at the scars from nightshade and needles, at the calluses from years of hard labor. You were never just a servant. Maybe it was time to start acting like it. The first real test came 2 weeks before the wedding. A delegation arrived from the northern reaches, a coalition of frontier settlements that had always existed in uneasy alliance with Thornwind. Their leader, Chieftain Mara Ironwood, was a woman carved from granite and winter, her face marked with ritual scars, her presence commanding absolute attention. She'd come to assess the future queen. The meeting was held in the Great Hall, nobles arranged in careful hierarchy, guards at attention. Aria sat beside Ronan on a throne that still felt too large, too exposed. Chieftain Mara entered like a storm. She strode directly to the center of the hall, ignoring protocol, and fixed Aria with a stare that could have frozen fire. So? The servant girl who became a princess. Her voice was granite grinding against steel. The frontier has heard your story. They want to know if it's truth or fairy tale. The hall held its breath. Aria stood. What would you like to know? Everything. Start with the curse. So Aria told her. Not the sanitized version she'd given the court. The real story. The night Morgantha came to their village. The way her mother had bargained, threatened, refused. The moment the curse took her brothers. The screaming, the transformation, the horror. Her choice to stay silent. The 9 years of weaving poison into fabric while pretending to be nothing. She didn't spare herself, didn't make herself heroic. She just told the truth. When she finished, the hall was silent. Mara studied her. You chose silence over speech, suffering over safety. Why? Because they're my family. Family is blood. Blood doesn't always mean obligation. It does to me. Aria met her gaze evenly. I made a promise. I kept it. Even when it cost you everything? Especially then. Mara circled her slowly. The frontier respects strength. You showed strength, but strength in suffering isn't the same as strength in ruling. Can you make hard choices? Can you sacrifice others when necessary? I can make the choices that need making, Aria said carefully, but I won't sacrifice others unless there's no alternative. Pretty words. Easy to say in a peaceful hall. Mara stopped in front of her. Here's a scenario. Your husband goes to war. The battle's going poorly. You have information that could turn the tide, but using it means sacrificing a frontier settlement. 200 people, women, children, elderly. Do you give the order? The hall went deathly quiet. Ronan's hand tightened on the armrest. Aria knew he wanted to intervene, to protect her from this. She touched his arm. Let me handle this. No, she said simply. Mara's eyes narrowed. No? I don't give the order. I find another way. What if there is no other way? There's always another way. You just have to be willing to see it. Aria stepped closer. You're testing whether I'll choose pragmatism over compassion, whether I'll sacrifice the few to save the many. But that's a false choice. I spent 9 years finding solutions everyone said were impossible. I won't stop just because the stakes are higher. And if your idealism gets people killed, then I'll carry that weight. But I won't become the kind of ruler who treats people as expendable before I've exhausted every option. Mara stared at her. The silence stretched so long Aria's heart hammered against her ribs. Then the chieftain smiled. Good answer. She turned to Ronan. She'll do. The northern reaches support this union. Ronan exhaled. Thank you, chieftain. Don't thank me yet. She's going to be a pain in your ass. Rulers with principles usually are. Mara looked back at Aria. But the frontier respects her. That's worth more than gold. She left. The hall erupted in whispers. Aria sank back onto the throne, shaking. Ronan leaned close. You just won over the hardest political alliance we have. I didn't do anything. I just answered honestly. Exactly. He smiled. That's why it worked. The second test came from an unexpected direction. Lady Elise Greymont was a young noble, barely 20, who'd been angling for Ronan's attention since his coronation. Beautiful, wealthy, politically connected, everything a queen should be on paper. She cornered Aria in the gardens 3 days before the wedding. I thought we should talk, Elise said, her smile sharp. Woman to woman. Aria set down the book she'd been reading. About? You must know this is temporary. Elise sat uninvited on the bench beside her. The king's infatuation. It's romantic now, the servant girl who saved the kingdom. But romance fades. And when it does, you'll be left with a position you're completely unqualified for and a court that despises you. Is there a point to this? I'm offering you a way out, gracefully. Elise's voice softened with false sympathy. You could step aside, claim the stress is too much. I'm sure Ronan would understand. He'd probably be relieved, honestly. Then you and your brothers could live comfortably on a royal pension. No pressure, no scrutiny, just peace. Aria looked at her. Really looked. This girl wasn't cruel. She was desperate. Raised her entire life to believe her value lay in marriage, in status, in being chosen by powerful men. And now someone who'd never played that game was winning without even trying. Lady Elise, Aria said gently, I understand you're disappointed, but I'm not stepping aside. You don't understand what you're getting into. I understand perfectly. Aria stood. I understand the court will always look for reasons to dismiss me. I understand I'll make mistakes. I understand this will be harder than anything I've done before. She met Elise's eyes. But I also understand that running away won't make me happy. And neither will pretending to be something I'm not to make other people comfortable. You'll fail, Elise said, her voice breaking slightly. They'll destroy you. Maybe, but it'll be on my terms. Aria softened her tone. And for what it's worth, you deserve better than waiting for a man to choose you. You're smart, capable, and connected. You could do so much more than be someone's wife. Elise stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. Then she stood abruptly and left without another word. Aria watched her go, heart aching. How many women in this court are trapped like that? Waiting, hoping, reduced to pawns in someone else's game? She'd been invisible for 9 years, but at least she'd had agency, choice, purpose. Maybe being queen meant changing that for others. The wedding day arrived like an avalanche. Aria woke before dawn, her stomach a knot of nerves. Servants descended immediately, bathing her, dressing her, arranging her hair in styles so elaborate she could barely move her head. The gown was white and gold, heavy with embroidery, the train so long it required 2 attendants. She looked like a stranger in the mirror. You're beautiful, Ash said from the doorway. He'd grown 3 inches in the past months, his voice deepening. But you look terrified. I am terrified. Want to run away? I know a good escape route through the kitchens. She laughed despite herself. Tempting, but no. Her brothers appeared one by one, Kale adjusting his formal jacket awkwardly, Fenrir complaining about the collar, Theron silent but steady. They formed a protective wall around her, just like they had when she was small. Ready? Kale asked. No, but let's do it anyway. The ceremony was held in the castle's grand cathedral, a massive space of stone and stained glass packed with every noble, merchant, and dignitary who could secure an invitation. Aria walked down the aisle alone, her brothers following behind as honor guard. Every eye tracked her movement. She forced herself to breathe, to focus on Ronan waiting at the altar, his expression caught between awe and something that looked almost like fear. He's as nervous as I am. The realization steadied her. The officiant began the ceremony, ancient words about duty, honor, sacrifice. Aria barely heard them. She was too focused on Ronan's hands holding hers, warm and solid and real. Do you, Aria Vale, take Ronan Blackmore as your husband, your king, your partner in all things? This was it. The moment everything changed, she could still run, still refuse, still choose the easy path. But she'd spent 9 years on the hard path, and it had brought her here, to freedom, to family, to love. I do. Ronan's smile could have lit the sun. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife, king and queen of Thornwyn. The cathedral erupted in applause. Ronan pulled her close and kissed her, not the chaste ceremonial kiss she'd expected, but something fierce and claiming and entirely inappropriate for public display. She kissed him back anyway, because she was done being appropriate, done being invisible, done being anything except exactly who she was. The celebration lasted 3 days. Feasts, dancing, tournaments, diplomatic meetings disguised as parties. Aria smiled until her face hurt, shook hands with people whose names she forgot immediately, and slowly realized something fundamental. She was good at this. Not the performative parts, she'd never enjoy those, but the conversations, the problem-solving, the quiet moments where nobles came to her with concerns they wouldn't bring to Ronan. The southern border taxes are strangling trade. My daughter wants to train as a healer, but women aren't allowed in the physician's guild. The frontier settlements need better protection, but the military budget is stretched thin. Real problems. Real people. And Aria found herself listening, planning, offering solutions that combined frontier practicality with court resources. By the 3rd day, she had a list of reforms she wanted to implement. You're terrifying, Ronan said, reading over her shoulder. You've been queen for 72 hours, and you're already reorganizing my entire kingdom. Your kingdom was inefficient. My kingdom was stable. Stable and stagnant aren't the same thing. She pointed at her notes. Look, if we redirect even a fraction of the arena entertainment budget toward frontier infrastructure, we could build defensive outposts that would cut rating by 40%. That saves lives and money long term, and makes you very unpopular with the nobles who profit from arena fights. I'm already unpopular with them. Might as well accomplish something while I'm at it. He laughed and kissed her temple. You're going to change everything, aren't you? That's the plan. Good. I'd be bored otherwise. But not everyone was pleased with the changes. 1 month after the wedding, Aria was walking through the market district, something queens weren't supposed to do, but she'd never been good at following rules, when she heard shouting. A crowd had gathered around a young woman holding a baby, facing down a tax collector. I told you I paid last month, the woman cried. The records say otherwise, the collector replied, smug. Pay double for the missed month, or I seize your property. I don't have double. I barely have food for my daughter. Aria pushed through the crowd. What's the problem? The tax collector paled when he recognized her. Your Majesty, this is just a routine collection. Show me the records. He hesitated. She stared him down until he produced a ledger. Aria scanned it quickly. The woman's name was marked as delinquent, but the handwriting was different from the other entries, fresher. This was altered, she said flatly. Recently. You're collecting payments that were already made and pocketing the difference. That's absurd. I would never... Guards! 2 soldiers appeared immediately. Aria had learned to always travel with protection. Take him to the magistrate. Full audit of his records. You can't do this, the collector sputtered as they seized him. The king will support his wife. Ronan's voice cut through the crowd. He'd followed her, of course. And every tax collector in this city is about to undergo a very thorough review. If we find evidence of corruption, you'll all wish you'd been honest. The crowd erupted in cheers. The woman with the baby approached Aria, tears streaming. Thank you so much. Aria took her hands. What's your name? Mira, Your Majesty. Mira, I want you to come to the castle tomorrow. Bring proof of your tax payments. We're going to fix this system so no one can exploit it again. The woman nodded, overwhelmed. As they walked back to the castle, Ronan said quietly, "You just made enemies of every corrupt official in the city. Good. Let them be afraid. You've changed." He didn't sound upset, just observant. "I found my voice. I'm using it. Keep using it. The kingdom needs it." 6 months into her reign, Aria stood on the castle battlements at dawn, looking out over Thornwyn. The city was waking, smoke rising from breakfast fires, market vendors setting up stalls, children running through streets that were cleaner now, safer, better maintained. Not perfect, not even close, but better. Thinking deep thoughts? Fenrir joined her, handing over a cup of tea. Thinking about how strange this is. 6 months ago, I was nobody. Now I'm supposed to be someone everyone looks to. You were never nobody. He leaned against the wall. You just convinced everyone else you were. I'm leaving, he said abruptly. Aria's heart clenched. When? Next week. I want to see the world, meet people who don't know me as the cursed beast or the queen's brother. Just be Fenrir for a while. How long will you be gone? I don't know. A year, 5. Until I figure out who I am without the curse defining me. He looked at her. Will you be all right without me? I have Kale, Theron, the others. That's not what I asked. She smiled sadly. I'll miss you, terribly, but I understand. You need this. I'll come back. When you have your first child, probably. Can't miss being an uncle. No children yet. I'm still figuring out how to be a wife and queen. Adding mother to that list feels overwhelming. You'll be amazing at it, just like you're amazing at everything else you do. He pulled her into a hug. I'm proud of you, little sister, more than you know. She let herself cry a little. One by one, her brothers were finding their own paths. Kale had joined the Royal Guard. Theron was studying medicine. Cade was working with the frontier settlements. Lysander had discovered a talent for diplomacy. Ash was the only one still searching. She found him in the library that afternoon, surrounded by books on magic theory. Looking for something specific? She asked. He jumped. Just trying to understand what happened to us. Why the curse worked the way it did. If there are others like us. Aria sat beside him. Why? Because I was 7 when I turned into a beast. I lost 9 years. I should be 16 now, but I feel ancient, like I lived 100 lives in those cages. His voice cracked. I don't know how to be a kid. I don't know how to just exist without fear. She wrapped an arm around him. You don't have to be anything except exactly where you are. Healing takes time. How much time did it take you? I'm still healing, but it gets easier. He leaned against her. Promise? Promise. The true test of Aria's reign came at the end of her first year. The Western Alliance, a coalition of kingdoms that had always viewed Thornwyn with suspicion, sent an envoy demanding tribute. Protection money to ensure they wouldn't support raiders attacking the frontier. It was extortion dressed as diplomacy. Ronan wanted to refuse outright. His council advised paying to avoid war. Aria had a different idea. We invite them here, she said during the emergency council meeting. Host them for a week. Show them what Thornwyn has become. That's a risk, Lord Merrick warned. They'll see our defenses, our resources. Good. Let them see. Let them see a kingdom that doesn't just survive through strength, but thrives through innovation. Let them see the frontier settlements we've invested in, the trade routes we've secured, the reforms we've implemented. Aria looked around the table. They're expecting a warrior kingdom barely holding together. Show them something that would be more valuable as an ally than an enemy. Ronan smiled slowly. You want to out-diplomacy the diplomats. I want to give them a reason to choose partnership over extortion. It was a gamble, but it worked. The Western Alliance envoys arrived expecting brutality. Instead, they found efficiency, prosperity, a kingdom that had transformed from desperate fortress to thriving center of trade and culture in a single year. The head envoy, a shrewd woman named Ambassador Castellan, spent a week observing. questioning, testing. On the final night, she met privately with Aria. "You're not what I expected," Castellan said. "What did you expect?" "A puppet queen, a pretty face beside a warrior king, someone we could manipulate or intimidate." She smiled. "Instead, we found someone who's reorganized an entire kingdom's infrastructure in 12 months. Who's negotiating trade agreements that benefit everyone involved? Who's turned Thornwind from a liability into a potential asset?" "Is that a compliment or a threat?" "Both." Castellan set down her wine. "Here's my offer. The Western Alliance withdraws its demands for tribute. In exchange, we establish a formal trade agreement, open borders for merchants, shared intelligence on raider movements, mutual defense pact." Aria kept her expression neutral. "And if Thornwind refuses, then we proceed with the original plan: economic pressure, support for your enemies, slow strangulation." Castellan leaned forward. "But I don't think you'll refuse, because you're smart enough to see this is the better option for everyone." "I need to consult with my husband and counsel." "Of course. Take your time. We leave tomorrow." That night, Aria and Ronan stood on the battlements again. "It's a good deal," he said. "Better than we hoped for. It makes us dependent on their goodwill. It makes us partners. That's different." He looked at her. "You did this. You turned a threat into an opportunity. We did this. Together. No, this was you." He pulled her close. "A year ago, you were fighting just to survive. Now you're reshaping international politics. You're extraordinary. I'm terrified I'll make a mistake that costs lives." "You will. We both will. That's what ruling is, making imperfect choices and living with the consequences." He kissed her forehead. "But you'll make fewer mistakes than most, because you actually care about the people affected by your decisions." They accepted the alliance. The Western kingdoms became partners instead of enemies. And Thornwind entered a new era, not as a frontier fortress barely holding back chaos, but as a center of innovation and progress. All because a girl who'd been invisible learned to speak. 2 years after becoming queen, Aria stood in the great hall addressing the assembled court. She was pregnant, 6 months along, and still terrifying nobles with her reforms. "The Physicians' Guild will begin accepting female apprentices immediately," she announced. "Any guild master who refuses will lose their crown funding." Outrage erupted. "Your Majesty, this violates centuries of tradition." "Then it's time for new traditions." Aria's voice cut through the noise. "We're wasting half our potential healers because of arbitrary gender restrictions. That ends now." Lord Harwick stood. "And what of the other guilds? Will you force them to accept women as well?" "Yes." Chaos. Aria waited for it to subside. "I was a servant for 9 years, invisible, dismissed, treated as less than human because of my position and my silence. I know what it's like to be denied opportunities for arbitrary reasons." She placed a hand on her stomach. "And I will not raise the child, daughter, or son in a kingdom that limits people's potential based on anything except their ability and character." Silence fell. "Any guild that refuses will find crown contracts going to their competitors. Any noble who protests can explain to their constituents why they oppose progress. Any questions?" No one spoke. "Good. Meeting adjourned." She swept out of the hall, Ronan following. Once they were in private, he laughed. "You just declared war on half the guild system. They'll adapt or become irrelevant. Either way, the kingdom improves. Our child is going to be born into a completely different world than the one we inherited." "That's the idea." He pulled her into his arms carefully, mindful of her stomach. "I love you. Ferociously. Desperately. Completely." "I love you too." She rested her head against his chest. "Even when you let me terrorize your nobles. Especially then." The baby arrived during a spring storm. Labor was brutal. 18 hours of agony that made fighting Morgantha seem easy by comparison. But when the midwife finally placed the tiny, screaming infant in Aria's arms, every second of pain evaporated. "A girl," the midwife announced. "Healthy, strong lungs." Aria looked down at her daughter, at this tiny, perfect person who'd already inherited her father's gray eyes and her mother's stubborn chin. "Hello," she whispered. Welcome to the world. Ronan sat beside her, his expression something between awe and terror. She's so small. She won't be for long. Aria touched the baby's tiny hand, fingers wrapped around hers immediately. She's already strong. What should we name her? Aria thought of her mother, of her grandmother, of all the women who'd fought and sacrificed and survived so she could be here. Alara, she said. After my mother, Alara Vale Blackmore. It's perfect. Her brothers crowded into the room despite protests from the midwife. Let me see, Ash pushed forward. Careful, Kale warned. They gathered around, these 6 men who'd been beasts, who'd suffered and survived and rebuilt their lives, looking at this tiny girl with wonder. She's going to rule kingdoms, Fenrir predicted. She's going to change the world, Theron added. She's going to be so loved, Lysander said quietly. Aria looked at all of them, her family, her heart, her foundation. Then at Ronan, her partner, her equal, her choice. And finally at Alara, this new life, this new beginning. She's going to have everything we didn't, Aria said firmly. Freedom, voice, choice. She'll never have to choose between survival and self, never have to hide who she is to stay safe. Because you made that possible, Kale said. Everything you did, the silence, the suffering, the fighting, it led here, to this. Aria looked down at her daughter, at this child who would grow up in a kingdom transformed by her mother's courage, who would never know what it meant to be invisible, powerless, voiceless, who would inherit not a curse, but a legacy. 9 years ago, she said softly, I made a choice. Silence for salvation. It cost me everything. My voice, my childhood, my sense of self. She looked up at her family. But it gave me this. All of you, free. A kingdom changed, a future worth fighting for. She smiled through tears. I'd make the same choice again, every time. Ronan kissed her temple. You never have to be silent again. I know. She held Alara closer. And neither will she. Years later, when Queen Aria's story was told in taverns and around fires, people argued about which part was most important. Some said it was the 9 years of silence, the sacrifice that proved her strength. Some said it was the defeat of Morgantha, the moment she became a hero. Some said it was the reforms, the changes that reshaped the kingdom. But those who knew her best understood the truth. The most important part was the choice she made every single day after, to be visible, to speak, to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves, to be not just a queen, but a force for change. Aria Vale Blackmore ruled for 47 years. She transformed Thornwind from a frontier fortress into a center of learning, trade, and innovation. She opened guilds to women, abolished unfair taxes, created the first frontier alliance that actually benefited frontier settlements instead of exploiting them. She raised 3 children, Alara, and later twins who inherited their mother's stubbornness and their father's tactical mind. She never forgot where she came from, never forgot the servants who were invisible, the people who struggled, the ones society overlooked. And every year, on the anniversary of her wedding, she visited the 7th level of the dungeons, now converted into a museum. The beast cages stood empty, preserved as a reminder. On those visits, she would trace her fingers over the iron bars and remember the girl who chose silence, the brothers who became beasts, the 9 years that felt like eternity, and the moment she found her voice and refused to ever be silent again. Was it worth it? Ronan asked her once, decades later, their hair gray, their children grown. She thought of everything she'd gained, everything she'd lost, the scars that never quite faded, the nightmares that still came sometimes. Every second, she said, every tear, every sacrifice, because it led here. To a kingdom transformed, to a family whole, to a life lived not in shadow, but in brilliant, defiant light. She'd been invisible. She'd been silenced. She'd been nothing in the eyes of a world that valued power over purpose. But she'd refused to stay that way. And in refusing, she'd changed everything. The end came quietly. Aria died at 68, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, Ronan holding her hand. Her last words were for Alara, now queen in her own right. Never be silent, she whispered. Never be invisible. Never let anyone convince you that you're less than extraordinary. Alara kissed her mother's forehead. I learned from the best. Aria smiled and closed her eyes. But her story didn't end. It lived on in every woman who joined a guild, every frontier settlement that thrived instead of barely surviving, every child who grew up believing they could be anything, regardless of where they started. Her story lived in the changes she made, the lives she touched, the world she left better than she found it. The girl who chose silence became the queen who spoke, and her voice echoed for generations. The kingdom mourned for 30 days, but even in grief, the work continued, because that's what Aria had taught them, that love meant action, that remembrance meant carrying forward the legacy, not just preserving the memory. Alara stood in her mother's private study, now hers, looking at the journals Aria had kept. 47 years of notes, observations, plans, ideas she'd never gotten to implement, problems she'd been working to solve. She never stopped, Alara murmured to her father. Ronan, now 74 but still solid as stone, touched one of the journals. She couldn't. Staying still felt like going backward to her. She always had to be moving forward, changing something, fixing something. His voice cracked slightly. It's what I loved most about her, and what made losing her so much harder. Tell me again, Alara said, how you really met her. Not the official story, the truth. Ronan smiled, that rare, genuine smile he reserved for memories of his wife. She was invisible. I walked past her 1,000 times and never truly saw her, until the night she saved my life without saying a word. He sat heavily. I fell in love with her courage first, her stubbornness second, her brilliant tactical mind third. Her actual face came much later in the list. Did you know, when you proposed, that she would become this? No, he was honest. I knew she was extraordinary. I knew she'd saved my kingdom. But I didn't know she'd revolutionize it. I thought I was marrying a survivor. Instead, I married a revolution. Alara picked up one of the later journals. She has notes here about education reform. Wants to establish schools in every frontier settlement. Free education for all children, regardless of birth or wealth. Then do it. Father, the cost alone will be worth it. Your mother spent 9 years proving that potential has nothing to do with status. That brilliance exists everywhere if you give people the chance to develop it. Ronan stood. She would want you to finish this, to keep pushing, to never settle for good enough when better is possible. Alara looked at the journals, at the decades of work her mother had poured into this kingdom, at the vision of a world where no child had to choose between survival and self-expression. I'll need help, she admitted. Uncle Kale is retiring from the guard. Aunt Fenrir is who knows where. The others are exactly where they need to be, doing exactly what your mother would want them to do. Ronan touched her shoulder. You're not alone, Alara. You have advisors. You have the council. You have me, for however many years I have left. Don't talk like that. I'm being realistic. Your mother and I had 47 years together. That's 47 more than I ever expected when I was a young king drowning in responsibility and loneliness. He smiled. But I'm not gone yet, and I intend to see your first major reform implemented before I am. The schools? The schools. Let's make your mother's dream real. The announcement came 3 months after Aria's death. Queen Alara stood before the assembled court, larger now than in her mother's time, including representatives from the frontier settlements, the guilds, the Western Alliance, and the Northern Reaches. My mother believed that every person, regardless of birth, deserved the opportunity to reach their full potential, she began. She proved it by transforming herself from invisible servant to revolutionary queen, by refusing to accept that her circumstances defined her limits. The hall was silent, attentive. Today, I'm implementing the final reform she planned before her death. The Aria Accords, a comprehensive education initiative that will establish free schools in every settlement, town, and city in Thornwyn. Every child, from the wealthiest noble to the poorest farmer, will have access to reading, writing, mathematics, and practical skills. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lord Greymont, Lady Elise's father, surprisingly one of Aria's strongest supporters in later years, stood. Your Majesty, the cost of such an endeavor. will be offset by redirecting funds from redundant military fortifications, now that we have peace treaties with our neighbors, by modest increases in luxury goods taxes, and by contributions from the guilds who will benefit from a better educated workforce. Alara's voice was firm. My mother spent years calculating every detail. The money exists. The question is whether we have the will. I support it, Chieftain Mara's successor, a younger woman named Kira Ironwood, called out. The northern reaches will contribute resources and teachers. As will the Western Alliance, Ambassador Castellan's successor added. One by one, the resistance crumbled. Because Aria had spent 47 years building relationships, earning trust, proving that her vision worked, and now her daughter was reaping that harvest. The Aria Accords pass, Alara declared. Construction begins immediately. The first schools will open within the year. The hall erupted in applause. Ronan, watching from the side, felt tears on his face. You did it, my love. Even in death, you're still changing the world. That night, Alara found her father on the battlements, the same spot where he and Aria had stood countless times over the decades. She would be proud, Alara said quietly. She would tell you to do more, to push harder, to never settle. Ronan smiled. But yes, she'd be proud. I found something else in her journals. Letters, dozens of them, written to me, to my brothers, to future grandchildren, to be opened at specific moments in our lives. She always planned ahead. One of them is addressed to you, to be opened on the first anniversary of her death. Alara handed him a sealed envelope. It's in 3 weeks, but I thought you might want it now. Ronan took it with shaking hands. Thank you. Alone, he opened it. My dearest Ronan, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you're probably standing on our battlements, being melodramatic about it. Stop that. I didn't love you for your brooding. I loved you despite it. I need you to do something for me. I need you to live. Fully, completely, without guilt. Our time together was everything I never thought I'd have. You gave me visibility when I was invisible, voice when I was silent, love when I thought I was unlovable. Don't waste what time you have left mourning what's gone. Spend it celebrating what was. Spend it teaching our grandchildren the stories I won't be there to tell. Spend it finishing the work we started. And Ronan, thank you for seeing me, for choosing me, for 47 years of partnership that made every second of those 9 years of silence worth enduring. I love you. I'll always love you. Now stop crying and go do something useful. Yours forever, Aria. Ronan laughed through his tears. Even in death, she was giving orders. Even in absence, she was pushing him forward. He folded the letter carefully and tucked it inside his jacket, over his heart. All right, my love, he said to the wind. I'll live. I'll teach. I'll finish what we started. He looked out over Thornwind, the city lights spreading like stars, the distant frontier settlements glowing with new prosperity, the future his wife had built through sheer, stubborn determination. But I'm doing it my way, which means I'm going to be absolutely insufferable about telling everyone how brilliant you were. He could almost hear her laughing. The first Aria Academy opened 18 months later. It stood on the exact spot where Aria had first entered Thornwind as a terrified 10-year-old. A symbolic choice that made everyone who knew the story weep. The building was beautiful, stone and glass, designed to let in maximum light. Inside, children from every background sat together, learning side by side. Noble children next to farmers' children. Frontier settlers' children alongside city merchants' children. Exactly as Aria had envisioned. Ronan attended the opening ceremony, now 76 and walking with a cane. Alara stood beside him, her own children, Aria's grandchildren, running through the halls with the other students. She would have loved this, Alara said. She's here, Ronan replied, in every stone, every book, every child who gets a chance they wouldn't have had without her. An instructor approached, a young woman, barely 20, who'd been one of the first female physicians' guild members. Your Majesty, King Ronan, we're ready to begin the dedication. They followed her to the main hall where hundreds had gathered. Students, teachers, families, dignitaries. Alara stepped forward to speak. My mother began her life in this kingdom as nothing, invisible, powerless, silenced by necessity and circumstance. She could have stayed that way. She could have accepted her fate, survived quietly, and been forgotten. She paused, letting the words settle. Instead, she chose to be extraordinary, to fight for her family, to save a kingdom, to spend 47 years dismantling every barrier that kept people from reaching their potential. And now, because of her, children like her, children from nowhere, with nothing, have the same opportunities as princes and princesses. She gestured to the students. This is her legacy. Not monuments or statues, but living, breathing proof that circumstances don't define destiny, that silence can become a roar, that one person's courage can change everything. The crowd erupted in applause. Ronan closed his eyes and felt his wife's presence like sunlight. We did it, Aria. We actually did it. Ronan lived another 4 years. He spent them teaching, writing, and making absolutely certain everyone knew that every good thing in the kingdom was Aria's doing. The tax reforms, Aria's idea. The guild system changes, Aria pushed for those. The peace treaties, Aria negotiated them. His advisors gently suggested he was being excessive. He ignored them completely. On his final day, surrounded by his children and grandchildren, he smiled. I'm ready, he said to Alara. I've done what she asked. I've lived fully. I've taught the stories. I've finished the work. She'll be waiting for you, Alara whispered, crying. I know. His eyes closed. I've been waiting to see her for 4 years. Finally. His last word was her name. Aria. They buried him beside her in the royal gardens they'd walked together thousands of times. The headstone was simple. Ronan Blackmore King, warrior, partner. I was better because she existed, and beside it, Aria's. Aria Vale Blackmore Queen, revolutionary, voice for the voiceless. Silence became thunder. Together, even in death, as they'd always been. The kingdom they'd built together continued to thrive. Schools multiplying, reforms deepening, the frontier and the cities finally unified in purpose. And every child who learned to read in an Aria academy learned her story first. The girl who chose silence to save her brothers, who became the queen who spoke for everyone who couldn't, who proved that extraordinary wasn't something you were born with. It was something you chose, every single day, no matter how impossible it seemed, no matter how invisible you felt. You chose to be seen, you chose to speak, you chose to change the world. That was Aria's gift. That was her revolution. And it would echo forever.